2024 business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. May we have a roll call for attendance, please, Ms. Griffin?
Yes, Megan Doyle.
Here.
Scott Fermender.
Present.
Tracy Irby.
Here.
Tom Kova.
Here.
Lauren Maller.
Here.
Una Petrowski.
Here.
Christina Preet.
Here.
Michael Smith.
Here.
Cindy Wolf Boynton.
Here.
And Susan Glenn.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. And just for the record, Ms. Mahler is attending remotely. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to make public comment this evening? Seeing none, I'll dispense with the public comment statement. Move on to the chair's report. So, board members, it is end of the year. School's winding down. You have half a day left, right? Dr. Kutaya and staff have big smiles on their face. We've got 2 graduations down, 1 more to go tomorrow evening. And congrats to all staff and students and families on a successful school year. I think it went pretty well. And that's really all I have to report. Do we have any liaison reports tonight? Mr. Smith?
Yeah, just one quick one from ACES. Less report, just more an interesting thing that I learned that I wanted to share with everyone in case we could do something similar. So Waterbury is partnered, obviously our communities are different, but both Waterbury and Naugatuck have partnered with Post University and Naugatuck Community College, and their students are graduating high school with associate's degrees, and as well as utilizing some of the facilities they have there. So it's pretty cool and exciting, and so just wanted to make sure we all knew that, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it. But that was my update.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other liaison reports? Okay, seeing none, I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Kutaya for what is the lengthy superintendent's report.
Yes, so glad we got to this very quickly. We have lots of information this evening, and looking forward to sharing with you the instructional highlight, which focuses on district improvement planning, and this is a full cabinet lift. So each member of our cabinet leadership will be engaging in part of this dialogue with you this evening. There's a lot of information that we have to share, and that's why we did share this information with board members early, giving you the weekend. Not that necessarily guaranteed a homework assignment for you, but at least allowed you access to that information. So we're going to share with you what we believe in draft format are our plans for the next few years. I think everybody has a copy now.
Ms. Mahler, you have your digital copy? Yeah. In your inbox.
Is Ms. Mahler all set with handouts? Excellent, thank you. So I think I need a clicker. Yes.
I got it.
It suddenly dawned on me, thank you, that we don't have a clicker. Okay, so we will be sharing with the board and the public likewise here some of our thinking around what the next few years will look like in Milford Public Schools. I would say this is draft foundational work, benefiting from the fact that we've had half of our cabinet is new to the district or new to their position. This school year. We've had the great benefit of having new eyes on many of our systems and structures and work, coming from outside the district or just in different roles for the district. So we are sharing this evening some of our draft work with you in hopes that it sparks a dialogue for the years to come and get the input of the board, the feedback, so we can continue to build a district improvement plan for the school district. Go ahead and bring them all in, Lewis. So this slide should look very familiar to you. If you're thinking, wow, I think I saw that back in January, you're right. This is a slide in my budget presentation to the board. And I think it was Mr. Smith that was in shock and awe that his graduating year, do I remember that right? It was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, so just wanted to bring that fresh memory to mind again.
Well, it's timely as I had no recollection of an alma mater song at Ford's graduation. So
I didn't see you singing along, so.
No, I did not remember there was a song.
So this is just a friendly reminder that our work is built on a solid foundation, a legacy of excellence, progress, and achievement. These plans that we are are planning forward with, moving forward with, are built on a reflection of where we've been, where we are, and where we want to go. And similarly, the next slide, I had an opportunity, remember the story where I literally walked down the hallway, went into the filing cabinets, and looked at the budgets for the last 20 years? Well, I conducted a similar activity in the last 8 weeks, and I went hunting for the district improvement plans that we could get our hands on, right, Ms. Griffin?
Yes.
And unfortunately, Google Drive has not been with us long. Some of the databases have changed over the years, but I was able to get my hands on 3 core documents dated 2008, 2011, and 2017. And when it comes to improvement planning, we've seen things like back in 2008, something referred to as the strategic roadmap. And in 2011, there was a district continuous improvement plan that had a lot to say about CMT and CAP targets, numerical targets. And then one in 2017, led by my predecessor, Dr. Fieser, that really had a lot of work done on SBA targets. So those were some of the measures that I saw throughout the improvement plans. But when it got into the strategies for improvement, which was most interesting to me, I saw things like strengthen the instructional core and develop an instructional framework. Well, that's 2008 language for HQI. Develop a literacy model. You'll hear that from Mr. Autieri this evening. Build, develop, and implement curriculum. Invest in teacher and administrator evaluation in order to develop professional growth. You'll hear that again tonight. You see the word capacity all through the 3 documents that I saw in 08, 11, and 17. And building capacity in the world of education is also known as professional development. This was pretty intriguing. Develop the capacity of literacy and numeracy coaches. Not something new in Milford. Conduct instructional rounds, which is the infancy stages of HQI Live. Rounds being get into each other's classrooms and talk about instructional practice and see what works and doesn't. That's at the core of HQI Live. The use of data to inform next steps and to inform instructional practice. And focus on college and career readiness. So you see, the budget priorities for 20 years aligned with and create a foundation for the budget we propose for 24-25. Likewise, in the district improvement plan documents that I found from 08 to 11 to 17, we saw commonality, foundational alignment with where we are now in the district and where we are going. So I like to think of our improvement planning, what we'll be talking about tonight, is a continuation and a response to where our kids are today, and an understanding of what is working and not working. So in our district improvement planning moving forward, I've been working with our cabinet members to develop 5-year plans by department. And by department, I mean the departments that are represented by the cabinet members. Our next steps in that area is to develop multiple measures of progress monitoring, such as monitoring of standardized test scores, understanding and using interim assessments, and non-standard measures, such as what we call Milford measures, which is a supplement to other data points, not a replacement as may have been talked about in public. So we're building those measures that are relevant to our students and our curriculum today. Moving forward, we are developing processes for data collection. We have a new database that we've rolled out this year, and Mr. Autieri in the coming year will be developing and training our teachers on a data analysis protocol. And then we also ask ourselves, what are the resources we need to support the improvement efforts? Another layer below this, which is not included in this presentation, is our work with schools in building school improvement plans that align with these district improvement plans. That's for another conversation, another day. So in creating that background for the board, I'd like to go ahead and get started with what each of our departments is dreaming for the next few years. I know you'll likely have lots of questions, so I just ask maybe that you jot yourself some notes, because some of these department plans actually cross with other plans. And so maybe your question will be answered that way. If not, we'll definitely have plenty of time for Q&A. Is that pleasing to the board?
That's good.
All right, great. Ms. Capazza, we'll start with talent management and development.
Thank you. So in the world of talent management and development, we have centered our work and our goals around the human capital leaders in education professional standards. These standards were developed by ASPA, which stands for the American Association of School Personnel Administrators, and that is the leading organization in our field and was established in 1938. So the standards are broken down into the three core areas that we have on that slide: talent acquisition, talent development, and total rewards. And each of the standards have three categories of work within each of the broader areas. Everything that we do in talent management is in service of attracting, which falls under acquisition, hiring and developing, under development, and total rewards, obviously under total rewards, which is retention work. So the Optimum, in order to do all that, we are, sorry, I'm messing up here. Everything we do is in service of attracting, hiring and developing and retaining the optimum talent we can find to provide the absolute best possible learning experience for the students in Milford. That's what I wanted to say. We have highlighted in bold under each category the 5 goal areas that we will focus our work on in the next few years. Next slide, please. In the talent acquisition bucket, we will be working on many of the areas that I have been recently speaking to you about: strengthening the diversity of the candidate pool, building up the pipeline of teacher candidates for the future, etc. Strong collaboration across departments, such as partnering with teaching and learning, is key here to effectively identify and hire top talent who can seamlessly integrate into our team. So those are just some of the examples there. Next slide, you got it, right? In addition, we are in the process of streamlining and standardizing our hiring processes and procedures to ensure a consistent, equitable process that reveals the best candidates. We have started this work and we'll be refining it as time goes along. We're hoping to unveil it this summer. We'll report back on that. Next slide. In the standards, employment contracts and paperwork are actually part of the hiring process, not the onboarding process. We seem to use that term loosely, but from here on in, we're going to focus on what onboarding is, and that's what we do to foster the inclusion and engagement of new staff. So much of our work and goals here will surround how to make the new employee experience meaningful and representative of our core priorities and values. Next slide. You may have heard the term total rewards. If not, this term refers to the combination of benefits, compensation, and rewards that employees receive from their employer or workplace. This would also include recognition and future career opportunities. So total rewards are a combination of both extrinsic and intrinsic rewards or value. This is where our retention and our total employee experience lives. Many of these goals will lead us to better fostering a culture of appreciation and of celebrating employee success, which we hope will help us with retention. So to sum it up, in combination, all of these goal areas and work will further our efforts to create and support a diverse, enthusiastic workforce, leading us to an amazing employee experience for all in a district of excellence.
We'll kick it off to Steve.
So in the area of teaching and learning, we have 4 major goal areas that we're looking to guide our work, and opportunities for us to connect with our instructional supervisor team as we build our goals and our action items. So the first goal that I have for you this evening is goal number 1, and that is focused on rigorous and innovative learning experiences. And within that particular goal area, there are 6 action steps that we're looking to take. I'm hoping that many of these are familiar to you as they are connected to many of the instructional highlights that you've heard over the course of the school year this year. One of the biggest ones is looking at our K-12 literacy and STEM curriculum. Specifically, obviously next year, as Dr. Kataya referenced earlier in her presentation, looking at our elementary literacy model with the shifts to the science of reading is a major goal area that we will be digging into. The STEM experiences, as we talk about opportunities to continue to expand authentic learning experiences in our STEM labs, and also looking at our assessments across our core middle school and high school math curriculum. In the area of visual and performing arts, we're looking at creating long-term equipment plans for instruments, for art equipment in the art rooms, but also connections interdisciplinary between different areas such as art and business. Vision of the learner. We currently this year are completing our scope for our high school MBDE or Mastery-Based Diploma experience and looking to transcend that down to middle school next year with the eventual hope of having a K-12 experience. Our school-wide enrichment model at the elementary level, having that as part of our elementary structure throughout the year. And our MTSS process, which we have finished creating this year at the elementary level, looking to expand that out to the middle and high school next year with regards to the responsibilities of our teachers, instructional coaches, etc.
MTSS meaning?
Multi-tiered systems of support. So the supports that we provide to our learners. In goal area number 2, as we talk about reimagining education for tomorrow's workforce, we've had some recent presentations on this. 2 of those are expansion of our dual enrollment or dual credit pathways, as well as our career pathway work. So we, again, are looking for career pathways that are reflective of careers that are high skill, high wage, and in high demand based on labor and market force data. We have already begun partnerships with Southern Connecticut State University and UConn to look at expansion of our ECE courses and other types of dual enrollment courses that we could offer to our students, specifically in the areas of things like psychology, digital photography, and wellness. Our world language programs, we are excited about the opportunity to offer ASL to our middle schoolers next year, but also continue to build the workout around our proficiency assessments in grades 5, 8, and 11. And lastly, our school counseling work in the regards of building our student success plans, which is our map for the academic, social, emotional, and career experiences our students have throughout their middle and high school journey. For goal area 3, this one is enhancing the programs for the future of learning. When we talk about learning experiences over the next couple of years, a lot of this will be centered around revisions to our elementary report card structure, as well as reimagining our elementary schedule, but also talking about common grading practices at the middle and high school level. Summer programming, we are looking at a redesign in collaboration with the Pupil Services Office around our summer school and looking at a summer enrichment model. Interdisciplinary learning, we continue to define our work at the early childhood level around intentional play, but also think about the infusion of our science and engineering practices through the next generation science standards into the experiences in our STEM classrooms. This is one that you've heard multiple times, especially on your school tours with us. Dr. Kataya and I are invested in energizing our learning spaces, whether that be our CTE classrooms, our classroom furniture, to really re-envision what learning looks like based on our vision of the learner, opportunities for collaboration and other attributes. Systems for equity. Working with Marissa Akampora, we are going to go down the road of looking at some curriculum audits and also chances for affinity groups for our students and staff to be able to share their experiences as a learner within the Milford Public Schools. And parent learning, we're looking at some opportunities to expand from the parent university model, offer some early childhood fairs and STEM nights in the future. And finally, in goal area number 4, which looks at intentional professional learning, and the key thing is we're looking at intentional professional learning for all and really supporting continuous growth. And there's 3 action items within this bucket. The first one is really thinking about strengthening and continuing to strengthen our MPS coaching model, specifically around professional learning and opportunities to discuss student learning and performance data. Looking at our model for high quality instruction, we want to continue to provide opportunities not just through HQI Live, but embedded throughout the school year for some many HQI Live experiences across all 14 of our campuses. And using the Milford measures, as Dr. Kataya referenced earlier, to gauge the effectiveness of our HQI PL work with students in the classroom. And finally, our district PL structures. Again, we're looking to provide that alignment and coherence between the different professional learning opportunities that we have in district, one of them being specific around opportunities for staff to discuss data and school, department, and grade level data teams. So with that being said, I'm happy to kick off the presentation and send it over to Jen Stewart for PPS.
Thank you. So we know the Department of PPS encompasses many different components, and special ed is a huge part of it, but it's truly just one part because we really look at the continuum of services for all students from pre-K all the way through 22 if they're special ed or regular ed. I think one of the things I'm most proudest of this year is how the Teaching and Learning Department and PPS have come together. And Steve and I, we created Leaders of the Learning Coalition, where our instructional supervisors with Steve and I came together every month to really look at instruction and the HQI model, and we're going to continue that for next year. I also think as being a director, for the first year it's under my belt, and I'm getting an opportunity to work with a brand new team starting in the new school year. And we're gonna co-create, and our focus is gonna be on instruction, and it's also gonna be on that social emotional behavioral practices. And I think looking at that specialized design instruction, what does that mean in Milford for our special education students? How does that fit into the HQI model, and how are we gonna tailor it to meet our students' needs with their IEP goals and objectives? And one other thing is I want to make sure our special ed teachers have the training in reading along with their general education colleagues, so they're understanding what the best practices in the area of reading are to instruct our students. Goal area 2 really is talking about writing our individual education plans in a general education setting, and making sure our students have access to general education curriculum and looking at the service models that there could be, like is there a pull-in, is it a push-out, is it co-taught, depending on the student's needs. What we also, like Mr. Altieri talked about, is looking at ESY and what are those opportunities for our students with disabilities to engage with their peers and have those enrichment opportunities as well.
Could you speak up a little bit louder
Sure.
for Ms. Mahler? Thanks.
Sure. Goal 3 really talks about how do we write our goals and objectives that are tied to our curriculum, because we want to make sure our students are accessing the curriculum and not having the gap go even wider. So we call it's called unwrapping the standard, which we really look at our standards and taking, pulling the nouns and verbs of what are the skills the students really need to have and what are our accommodations the students need to access that general education curriculum. So there's going to be professional learning for our staff to kind of dive deeper into that with our general education colleagues to understand using the curriculum to make sure they are getting grade level content in their goals and objectives. Goal 4, I believe, is about testing and eligibility. So as a district, we're going to look at our process of testing and finding students eligible for special ed from the pre-SAT model all the way through the PPT to eligibility. We really want to make it consistent across the district to make sure we're using the same practices from pre-K all the way up to 22. Something else that I want to look at is our evaluation protocols, is making sure we're doing comprehensive evaluations and using all the tools and resources we can to make sure we understand a student's disability and make sure we accurately identify a student. And goal number 5 is, of course, how our behavioral and social emotional supports for our students. So of course, we want to continue building our in-house programs for our students with, social emotional needs, even, our specialized program that have maybe some cognitive disabilities, because we want to keep our kids in district. So we want to keep flourishing that program, along with looking at what are some SEL screeners we can use for all our students to really hone in on their deficits and where are their strengths and how we can help them grow as learners. And the last component is how do we help our families? And dreaming big down the road is like building a team of staff to really work with families that maybe go do those home visits or bring in for some, resources, and just have that conversation of how we can support them even more when it comes to helping their child at home and at school. So if you just look, PPS is really big, but like I said, it's not just special ed. I really look at the whole child, no matter if they're regular ed or special ed, especially with the connection with teaching and learning. And I think it's off to Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. So in the operations division, we see ourselves as an integral component of the organization that is in service to the instructional division. So in each of these 5 areas that you see here, we support the goals of the teaching and learning department. On this slide, you will see the overarching goals for each of these areas, and it talks about how we set the stage for learning in each of those different areas. This may look like something like creating and maintaining safe and secure, healthy facilities, providing safe, reliable, and timely transportation, delivering nutritious and healthy meals, and this is all while emphasizing efficient and transparent financial management practices. On this next slide, we have our facilities. As we are in the process right now with the 2 high schools, we are constantly examining our present facilities and thinking about how they best support the future of our curriculum work and how this can also enhance future career pathways. So we don't think of this curriculum in isolation. We like to think of it as how does the facility help support that curriculum and help support the learning that happens for the students. This next part here, the Athena Warehouse, this one is no secret as it has been on the capital improvement plan for a number of years. As Ms. Glennon had pointed out in this capital improvement plan that we just approved at a previous meeting, it was not on there, but that's pending the long-range facilities condition study. And that's not to say that that's not something that's needed, because that is something that's very, very important to us as a district. And I think that it's necessary to address and implement a comprehensive procurement process, which in the long run will look at different procedures for the whole district and also save us money. So that's something that's more to come. So as Mrs. Glennon mentioned, that is coming around. This next one here, enhance the indoor air quality assessment and HVAC procedures. This is something that's going to be very impactful to us, especially in these next 5 years as we take a look at all of our systems. As the board is aware, there is legislation that was recently passed along with our board policy to examine these different indoor air qualities for our schools and how we are best supporting learning in the environment. And this last one here is really a culmination of all these different pieces. The long-range facilities condition study is going to help us understand and prioritize our needs as a district and also allow us to further enhance our planning for the future. So that's something that we're really looking forward to. On to the next slide, safety and security. This is always on the forefront of our minds, and it's always a consideration in everything we do. So these action steps here significantly outline additional preventative measures that we are taking to enhance our current strategies. These include technological advances as well as in the areas of notification and surveillance, as well as considering the implementation of additional infrastructure needs. It's important to stay ahead of the curve in the area of safety and security. You never want to just say we're okay. We always want to be looking beyond to see what's next. And this is considering additional advances in the areas of technology and also personnel. Transportation, as the board is aware, this upcoming year we are entering our final year in our current transportation contract, which is something that we are currently exploring additional areas for. How do we make sure that we're planning for beyond the 24-25 school year and addressing our needs in a cost-efficient way so that transportation can continue to be a high quality for our district and our students. In addition to transportation costs, we are constantly looking at fuel costs and what's the best method to provide fuel for our vehicles. And not only look at the cost-effective measures for that, but in addition, look at the infrastructure needs for anything that we may take a look at exploring. And then this final one here, we are always looking to enhance our safety and security procedures, just like we were in the safety and security department. That's something that we always take a look at in our transportation as well as all of our departments. For food service, we are going to continue to operate a self-sustaining food service operation. That's something that's really important and that Mrs. Faustich and her team does a great job at maintaining. And we're always looking at incorporating additional ways to healthy whole food options for our students. Mrs. Faustich is constantly reviewing and thinking of different ways to meet that. We're also excited for the long-range facilities condition study for this department because they're also going to be exploring our current facilities for our food service department as well as the equipment that they have inside of those areas and thinking about how do those best meet the needs of our students. We're going to continue to meet and or exceed our state and federal guidelines in this department, which I'm sure you could imagine there's a lot of guidelines that need to be followed in this area, and it's something that needs constant monitoring. And then finally, we're always looking to engage our families. So this goal here is just to talk about how can we possibly engage our families more and make and do some education for our students on making healthy food choices. And then for our business department here, so as mentioned, we will continue to make transparent financial practices, and this would all be grounded in our continued efforts to maintain and remain student-focused in the acquisition of resources. So as in our professional and personal life, we're always looking at how can we possibly improve certain practices, systems, structures, things that we implement on a daily basis. So this could include how we look at our student activity accounts, ways to enhance technology or utilize technology to enhance and improve our practices. Also examine how do we pay our bills? Is there more efficient ways that we could possibly do that? And then looking at this procurement for the whole system. And I think that that procurement one, this part really is coupled with the facilities part. So when I look at the procurement process, it's really a co-effort on the business department and the facilities operation, because in order to implement a fully functional procurement process that really saves the district money, you need to have the right infrastructure for it on the facility side, but then you also need to have the right systems and structures and practices on the business department side so that we are monitoring the stuff that's coming in, buying in bulk, thinking of how we're utilizing our current resources. So this one really kind of goes hand in hand with the facilities department. And then just lastly, I think our success in the operations division is really measured by the degree that we support the teaching and learning department. And I think we are constantly looking at how do we support our students, teachers, and our families in the district. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Giancola.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. So my goal areas, my first goal area is in foundation and infrastructure. First off, we want to focus on getting more input from our teachers and administrators on what needs technology, what's working and what's not working. Thanks to the support of the board, we are beginning to modernize our infrastructure by starting with a new firewall and go from there with much more to come. More training is always needed, especially with the ever-changing landscape of technology, and a higher priority is needed, especially with AI coming, or already here, I should say. And then also easier access to our programs and training with a dashboard. Think of something like a Netflix type idea. That's a real big thought that we're trying to do there. My second goal is to help enhance teaching and learning, along with Mr. Altieri, to really focus on coherence across all areas. To continue to expand on the focus groups, to find emerging technologies that can enhance learning, like AI, VR, AR, and then more professional learning for my staff to help align with teaching and learning. And then to continue to ensure that all students have equal access to all technology resources. We already do this, but we just want to be sure that anything that we put out there is accessible to all our students. My third goal is innovation and collaboration, and this is probably my favorite. We're going to continue to support the technology needs of the current and future pathways, like manufacturing, bioscience technology, healthcare, culinary arts, marine science, and some emerging technologies that don't really exist yet. For example, advanced robotics, biobody technologies, like watches and e-health. I think e-health is going to be the next big thing to try to collaborate all of your, you go to one doctor that's in this program, one doctor that's in another. I think that's the next big thing coming. And then AI-powered diagnostic tools, smart kitchen appliances, with integrated sensors, with automation. With all that in mind, we want to create innovation labs across all levels of our schools, elementary, middle, and high, to cultivate the next generation of critical thinkers, innovators, and problem solvers. Students and staff will gain hands-on experience with emerging technologies, participate in research and development of these emerging technologies, and collaborate on real-world challenges. These will be the R&D labs with the latest technologies, again with AR, VR technologies, any other AI equipment that we can think of, and things that aren't even invented yet. And we also want to focus on creating a competitive engagements, like expanding our esports into the middle schools and just expanding it generally. And then, things like maybe a digital art challenge to go along with when we have our art show here. Innovation comes from challenges, and innovation comes from when people are, oh, I got first place on this. Well, where did that go from there? My fourth goal area is in cybersecurity, is in our cybersecurity framework. Of course, this has already started with the new firewall, but there's still more to come. I'd like to expand our threat protection to enhance our students' and staff's knowledge, more focused on trainings. And then I'd like to create, again, that on-demand resources that are accessible at any time. And I want to increase our threat intelligence and monitoring ability, along with predictive analysis, think of AI, to continuously identify these emerging threats, ensuring that our ongoing protection of our digital infrastructure is protected from sophisticated adversaries, which we know are using AI against us. So we need to get into that next level. My fifth goal is to enhance our integration of digital citizenship into all areas of curriculum. This includes a lot of collaboration with teaching and learning. Students need the understanding of key topics, not only to be safe online, but to also be responsible digital citizens. We want to promote and model positive online behavior and ethical use of digital tools. We also want to expand our parent and community outreach, like our community connections and parent universities. Our community and parents are some of our best resources to give us the valuable insight that we need. And then my sixth goal is, of course, on the thoughtful and responsible integration of AI tools and technologies into our school system. This is the fastest moving target that I've seen in technology by far. But we have the ability to expand our understanding and develop procedures and protocols for various artificial intelligence programs, both teacher and student facing. Again, we need our community and parents to be involved so we have a diverse perspective and can make informed decisions. This is all to prepare our students for a workforce that will become more dependent on the usage of human and machine interaction, such as AI diagnostic tools with healthcare settings, autonomous vehicle automation, AI ethicists, and other careers that have not yet been created. So with that, I'll turn it back to Dr. Stein.
Thank you. So next slide, Mr. Giancola, final slide. So where do we go from here? I hope the board was excited to hear about the many plans we have for the district over the next few years. So in my work with our cabinet members, we are going to be creating year-over-year action plans and identifying then the aligned resources and measures appropriate to knowing how successful we are with our students, particularly in an effort to progress monitor throughout the school year. And then to turn those over into more aligned school improvement plans that keep an eye on how each level, each school will be implementing these action plans, and also then using student-driven data to understand how successful we're being. So I look forward to providing updates to the board as the year goes along next year with some of the action plans that we have developed for 24-25. So at this time, we're happy to take questions from the board.
A lot to digest here. Questions or comments, Ms. Wolf-Boynton?
So, excuse me, so this is an amazing document, right? I feel like we are overhauling the entire Milford Public School system, right? Taking on so much, which I think is fabulous, but at the same time, there are so many other things going on. I'm wondering if yet within each of these areas, the goals have been prioritized of, you know, what might be tackled first, et cetera?
Right, so we also feel like, I don't know that it's overhaul, because I think it's just a continuation of the progress we're making. Our work for next year will be to prioritize the action steps within each. So there may be some in Mr. Altieri's department that have a greater priority. I think he mentioned, you know, K-5 literacy is at the top of the list, and some of those elementary elements that will align because of K-5 literacy and report cards and scheduling, et cetera. So each department will have prioritized action steps for next year, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. I have a lot of questions. Sorry. To start with, I'll go off Ms. Wolf-Boynton's comment. I agree it's a continuation of what has been going on. It reminds me kind of a business plan of, we put it on paper now, so we have plans in place and can create it from there, because it's a discussion that's been ongoing. The coherence across the district of what the plan is, but it always comes back to the budget. What are the budget goals? Whether it's the infrastructure, the cybersecurity, any of those, how does that go forward? Then I did question myself of, did we do these other years and I forgot them? But I realized no, I didn't. So I'm just gonna go through each department and the questions I had for each one. So for talent management and development, do you have numbers in terms of attrition of what is our percentage of teachers that stay for, for 1 year, for 5 years, for 10 years? At what point do they usually leave? How long is a typical tenure? Is there a point of, if they make it to 10 years, it's pretty unlikely that they're gonna leave. If they make it to 5 years, what's that sort of?
So those are the data points that we're starting to hone in on and come up with. We have some data, but it's not organized in such a fashion that when we have goals and we want to attack them, we need to figure out our baseline. So we are working on that.
How is that?
Same thing with the hiring, and like as you saw in the IED plan, right? We had to come up with those numbers.
In terms of the hiring, how has it been able to start the recruitment process with the universities and the talent in the pipeline within the local workforce? How has that been going?
In general, or?
In general.
We've always partnered with universities as far as getting our interns and our, any other program, but, so the way, like, we've done that all along, and it's farther and fewer in between. So we are trying to partner with various universities to create different pathways and different programs, that we work in conjunction together with.
Okay. So this is the first year, our first budget cycle, right, that you have the second person that we added?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, she started in January.
January.
Yep.
So 6 months, we've gotten a little
Yep.
bit. How has that been beneficial to the department and been able to help kind of solidify these plans?
Yeah, it's been amazing, as far as being able to do some of this work further that I could not do. I didn't have the time to. I now have the help, the talent. I mean, she's fantastic. I can't say enough good things about her.
Great.
So you'll see a lot from the
A lot
two
of
of
your
us.
hiring protocols that you were talking about is coming from Dr.
Yes,
Luby, right?
a lot of anything, yeah, I mean, the IED plan, a lot of it, she's able to focus on specific projects and see them from start to finish. I don't know if you've checked out our website, our newsletters, things like that. I mean, it's been fantastic.
Well, I think it helps to have sometimes different perspectives. it's totally different cabinets, so different experiences, bring that in, and the same as the board, we all have different experiences and see things differently. So to have someone to come in new when you've done things for so well for so many years and have a new perspective to say, hey, have you thought about it this way? And I think the other half of it is being open to those, because it's very hard to, we've done it this way for so long, why do we have to change when that's a big question. Okay, next on to pupil services, beneficial, I think the coherence and understanding that, I think that's something that always surprised me as a board member was that there's a general curriculum and then sometimes the implementation of how it's occurring across the schools is not always consistent, and that's where we're moving towards. It's been very helpful to see, and I like the plan of having the IEPs and the students who have IEPs not to be so singled out in some ways, is that they're gonna learn the same ways, we just have to alter them from there. What supports do we as a district need other than funding that you think long-term would help do these kind of aspects?
I think I need to see when I start putting this in place and working with teams, what they're going to need to continue this work.
So just for my clarification, we have, all students are in regular ed classrooms for the most part. There's no pull-out special classrooms anymore.
So there's the specialized programs, so some students spend, say, a good, 80% of their time in there, but the majority of our students are in general education.
Okay.
So Ms. Doyle, there is pull-out,
There is.
Yes.
to be very specific. So in the specialized programming that you approved through the budget allows students to spend a little bit more time outside of the regular classroom for that specialized instruction, so.
Right, and that's part of what we were kind of creating those specialized programs, so less students need to go
Right.
externally.
And the goal always is to spend as much time with typical peers as possible. It's always the goal.
And you'd spend, say in an elementary setting there, gym, art, music kind of classes in that kind of more social aspect.
So, yeah, students will participate there, but also let's say it's, reading, we want them to be participating in their general education class instead of always being pulled out to get the support from the regular ed teacher.
Great. Okay. Operations. Procurement process. I think that's interesting. Is there a kind of a cost benefit analysis? Because we've had this Eels Hill
Yes.
phantom for quite a while, which costs a couple $1 million, but if, we can buy 1 million plastic bags in the start of the school year for half the cost, there's gonna be a benefit long-term to be able to store that and then utilize those systems. Is there kind of what would be the overall savings of having such a procurement? I mean, you don't have to have a dollar figure, but an idea of what.
Right. No, in terms of a dollar figure right off the top of my head, I don't have that, but I do know that when we think about having a procurement process for a district this size, I think it's something that's necessary. And what it does is it helps us track inventory, helps us keep inventory, and like you said, it allows us to utilize that bulk purchasing. And as deals come up, and we do have our business department what are actively seeking these different deals, when you have 14 different sites, it becomes a little difficult sometimes to buy those purchases in bulk. But there are certain standard items that you can now capitalize on. It's just, if there was a certain deal that came up and you were able to buy something in bulk, it's where do you store that at this point, right?
Right.
So I think that there would be a cost-saving measure that would come with this. And it would really depend on the actual procurement process that we put in place for that too, to help emphasize those savings. And I think that's really where you would see long-term savings, is constantly refining that process to make sure that we do that.
So from a current perspective, if law needs for its facilities management in terms of just facilities, not including the kitchen, paper towels, toilet paper, all of those kind of things, how does that process usually occur? Is it at an individual school level, or are we purchasing?
So for those types of purchases, those are purchased centrally through the facilities department, and those are sent out to the schools. So those ones there are centrally purchased.
Okay, so then what would be?
More
part
of
of-
like instructional supplies. So if you thought about typical instructional needs that we would have for any given year. Also, if there was classroom furniture, things of that nature. some of these items are larger in nature, and you think of instructional supplies, but those can add up in space quite quickly, and in terms of that, and plus the furniture in the classroom as well. So it's really utilizing that space and having that space where things can be categorized and classified, and we would also need some kind of like technology system in there to help organize it and make sure that it was barcoded, and it's a whole huge process that would go with this, and in that way we can track how things are sent to schools, how much each school are using on any given month, year, and what their needs are. Help get ahead of that curve. So if we know that in this month we're going to need X, Y, Z supplies on a typical yearly basis, you can now track it over time with a system like that.
And you can track waste.
And waste, yeah.
If
Um,
we
now
could, let's see if some other people have questions,
Okay.
and then we can come back to you if your questions haven't been answered. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, just a real, hopefully brief comment. I wanted to say I really appreciated the focus on cybersecurity, both in the hardware and the software. As someone who grew up with an MS-DOS computer that with actually a floppy drive that I got to use first, and like then hosted like LAN parties in middle school, it's really cool seeing how much the technology has evolved. And so I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, but I think the training was the part that I'm most excited about, because even today I was listening to a conversation with one of the federal election officials, and talked about how 6 months ago they could spot an AI-generated deepfake, but even today it's much harder. And so I think it is really important that we not only invest in that hardware, but also training our students, our faculty, and our families, because if it's hard for a professional to identify a fake, it's going to be really hard for the folks who want to click on that suspicious link from the email that they shouldn't. And so really appreciate that focus on culture and cultivating culture, so that we're appropriately skeptical when it is important, and also that further underscores how AI can be used for good. And also for nefarious purposes, like the New York Times just had a story last week about how some students use the AI notification software, and so that was the fallout of that and how the school dealt with it, and the challenges that many districts and communities are grappling with, how the laws aren't always up to date with the changing technology. So really appreciate that, and especially considering that the foreign high class president just closed his commencement speech utilizing ChatGPT. Really appreciate the commitment, so thank you.
Ms. Preet?
I have two questions for Mr. Brennan and one for Mr. Giancola. Okay, two questions for Mr. Brennan and one for Mr. Giancola. Facilities, attain a warehouse to enhance our processes for inventory control. So, just as an example, the hallway between the Boys and Girls Club and the Police Academy houses a lot of stuff. So is there anything, I'm all about efficiency, is there anything that we can understand more about? Can we sell that somewhere, or, does it just continue to grow, or does it utilized or moved around based on the needs of the school? We don't still have the trailers, I think, or do we still have?
We do.
Okay,
A few.
so is there ways to offload or sell, or are there markets for it?
Yes.
Just to reuse, repurpose somewhere else?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
good.
That's a great point, because that's also part of the reason why this warehouse facility would help us move into being able to unload those trailers, right? So right now we have things on trailers, and I'm sure as you can imagine, you can't just get in there and look for something. So we need a spot that's large enough to unload those, take a look at the stuff that's on there, assess it, and then look at what is something that we can sell. And there are places out there that would come in and help with that process, and they take a look and they would give a suggested price of what that would go. And then Mr. Bradbury has a process of how he would now sell those items so that it's not just necessarily wasted, yes.
Excellent, thank you. And then on the food services, I don't see a point, but I want just to at least consider, and I know the state of Connecticut has guidelines on this in terms of waste. We did have a little bit of a pilot program where at a couple of the elementary schools where we would collect any of the breakfast items, because breakfast was free. Any of the breakfast items were going into, from the classrooms, the kids, let's say they didn't open their little cereal cup, They put it in a food to kids bag, and at the end of the week, they were picked up by a Boys and Girls Club member who happened to be on staff, brought them back to the club, and either those snacks that were uneaten were either kept at the club, or a lot of it went to the Purple Pantry, which is down the street from the club. Can we consider more of those types of opportunities? Sometimes the fruit that comes on the lunch tray gets thrown in the garbage just because, maybe they can't get the rind off the orange, or, the apples are too hard because the child has braces. So can we consider more of those opportunities in connection with the state of Connecticut guidelines so that it just doesn't go in the garbage? I think that would be great.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think that's something that we are always constantly considering, and we have worked closely with community agencies to help do things like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could imagine there are certain guidelines with, from the health department, from other agencies, with the types of food that we can actually give, and then giving some of those things away. If there was a problem with that food,
Right.
what's the back end of that? So there's certain things that we need to consider as a district as well, too.
And the health department,
From
right.
the health department,
Yep.
before we can just give things away, but that is something that we have been working on, and we are in partnership with the city and other agencies to help eliminate food waste.
It's
like
not
that.
as easy as one would think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, it makes sense, why can't you just give that orange away?
yeah,
You can't really,
right.
unless it's wrapped in plastic.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking about other efficiencies in waste, right? So to the degree we can, I think that could be entertained.
Yeah. And
We've had
Bethel
lots of
Center is
conversations
happy
about
to
that.
organize volunteers, so definitely, from the health department guidance and the state of Connecticut guidance, whatever we can do.
Absolutely,
Yep.
and to
Okay.
that point, just one small example, Mrs. Faustich is aware of that and is in communication with those individuals as well. If, as you guys are aware, we batch cook, so if for whatever reason we have an abundance of food that's, properly maintained and has at the right temperature for the right amount of time, and then she would now communicate with one of those organizations so that that food does not go away. So that's just one small example of how we are engaging in that practice.
Great, very good, thank you very
And I
much.
just want to distinguish, the use of a warehouse, I think when we say the word warehouse, it could conjure up storage, right? And hence your mind going to that hallway
Yeah.
at Simon Lake. We are very specifically thinking about procurement and efficiencies there. So, for example, all students use a writing journal. So right now, 8 elementary schools order their own writing journals for their own school. Well, wouldn't it be great if we just batch ordered writing journals on July 1st every year? It would go to the quote-unquote warehouse, and then as schools need it, so we've saved money in a large order, and we can also then digitally identify what's usage like across 8. Right now, we just say, okay, every elementary school gets X amount of money per pupil, and discretion goes, it's a distributed discretion of purchasing of certain resources. Allows us to revisit, even budgetarily, if that's efficient. So it's not just storage when we say a warehouse, okay? It has a lot to do with what the resources we're using and how we can get the best price for that, and then how can we distribute to where it's needed, okay?
Okay, very good. And then just one question on Chromebooks for Mr. Giancola. So as far as the student-issued Chromebooks, I almost feel like, I was almost expecting to see it in a word here, but now I'm feeling like we treat it like it's almost as passe as like a calculator, right? So the students all still get Chromebooks. How is that working? Are they coming back to you? How many do you need to build? How many do you need to order for the next school year? What condition are they in? Is that, again, efficient, right? How is that process working? And obviously it plays into the modernized hardware and network infrastructure, I would think, right? So
Yeah,
can you
yeah,
explain that a little bit?
It definitely does. So we have a 5-year replacement cycle for all our Chromebooks. To be honest, our worst group is our middle school kids, break them all the time. But in that regard, we're fixing, we're replacing, stuff gets, too broken to be repaired, and we just, buy new ones and just keep them going. But we try to replace, we are replacing the entire fleet every 5 years. You're not really, you're talking about a $200 device. We're getting our 4 to 5 years out of that.
Okay.
We're pushing it in that 5th year, but like I said, when the middle school kid breaks that one, we give them the oldest one so that, you know, hopefully their friends see that and, you know, they're like, oh, I'm not gonna break mine, I'm gonna get that one, you know? But, yeah, we have a 5-year replacement cycle on just about all our devices. You know, our computers, you know, that the secretaries are using, our teacher laptops, everything is on a 5-year replacement cycle.
Okay, and it's pretty efficient, there's no real, you know, it's well-oiled, there's no real opportunities to
yeah.
find, okay.
That's why I didn't even mention it, because
Yeah, that's
it's
what I
like,
figured,
like you said, it's like a
an
calculator. Every
assumption,
kid has
right,
one,
yep.
and if it breaks or whatever, we just get them another one.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Mr.
A
Smith?
quick follow-up on streets. So I appreciate the food diversion stuff. Appreciate finding ways to work with community groups. The other question is, have we looked at looked at recently utilizing like an anaerobic digester for the food that isn't safe to be consumed? I know that in the last few years, a lot of the dairy farms, or a lot of the farms in Connecticut have started utilizing them to both divert their food waste and create energy, and then also some savings. And I think there might be one in Bridgeport, but just want to make sure we're looking at ways to maximize that stuff. Thank you.
Good suggestion, thank you.
Ms. Doyle, we go back to you.
My last question was on waste. I don't know, that's one thing I've never seen, is how do we pay for our garbage collection? Is it part of the city? Do we pay for it? Do we pay the city for it?
So that is part of, I think it would be part of our own budget. It's not part of the city, but I would have to double check on that.
It took all year to stump Mr. Brennan. Just the last meeting of the year,
Yeah.
we have just stumped him.
Because I don't-
say that we would
I
pay
haven't
for it,
seen,
but
I don't feel like I've seen it ever on a, like, more than $1,500, like, collection or.
Which
There's a
makes me
dumpster.
think.
There's a
makes
dumpster.
me-
We know it gets
makes me
taken
believe
away.
It's a city thing, but I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, which points to all their other questions about composting. If we are paying for it, like, because I don't think it's a separate service, or you don't see All American Waste coming. They don't seem like that sort of pickup.
Yeah,
So, that's it.
I could look into that and get back to you.
Ms. Petrosky?
I just had one question after you guys have asked some great questions. On the bid side, are we leaning more towards a CapEx or OpEx model, or are we looking at migrating from, purchasing equipment to leasing, subscription services, et cetera?
So, of course, we're looking into, I mean, everything's going subscription model at this point.
Yeah.
Just because you can get the latest and greatest and, but it's a hard shift from where we are now to that, because the expenses, I have to ask you for more money every year to keep up with those expenses, where if I just buy something, I have it and I know I can keep it for 5 years. However, we do lease all our Chromebooks because we can get more upfront and just pay for them in the 5 years before we replace them. So we've been doing that for quite some time now.
Okay. So like firewalls, for example, that there's now, you buy the equipment, but you've got a subscription service with it.
Yeah, so we've been looking at that. A lot of the models are now changing. So like our Wi-Fi infrastructure, you can actually buy a 5-year license when you buy it. So we're good for 5 years. And
Yeah.
then hopefully we're replacing it in 5 years and we're getting a new license. So we don't have to worry about that piece of it. A little more upfront cost, but in the long run, we're saving money on that.
Okay. That was it.
Ms. Mahler, did you have questions? There you go.
I did, yes. I was going to politely wait until all the voices I can't really see were finished talking. So just want to say, in looking at this plan, I'm, as someone who is a self-proclaimed plan junkie and would plan everything all the time in great detail like this, so impressed and always am with what this team does when it comes to your approach to putting together these plans and strategies. How much of it is data-driven? I think that's such a refreshing change from what you see in a lot of places, that it's not just, well, we've done it like this, so we're gonna do it like this again. Maybe we'll polish it up a little bit. Or we think this might work, we have a feeling this will go, a hunch that this will be successful, but that it really is not just data-driven from the perspective of evaluation and iteration, but it's actually data-driven from the initial start of, here's how we're going to approach this problem, because this is what the data shows works. And that leads to smarter, more strategic, more thought-out plans and strategies and policies at this level. And seeing that just broken down, goal by goal, department by department, laying out greater detail on a lot of the things that we've already seen and heard about, but seeing how those things are going to be expanded and what's going to be added to them to really round out what the district will be doing in these different areas is so great to see and is so encouraging. And the one downside that I often see, and I hate even saying it out loud, but there's that little voice in the back of my head that insists on it, is that as this great, amazing planning document translates itself into action plans and translates itself into smart, well thought out implementation, and then actually lands on the ground at the feet of our kids and our staff and our families and changes specific things and impacts specific things about their lives and what they're doing, I would strongly encourage that the sort of Achilles heel of this amazing data-driven process is that oftentimes the human side impact, the qualitative versus the quantitative, if you will, gets overlooked or slightly diminished in the implementation stage. So I would simply say, as each of these amazing ideas across departments goes into the next planning phase, into those action plan development stages, that consideration, perhaps a bit more than usual, is given to both the specific consequences, but also the unintended consequences that all of these great ideas on paper have on real people's lives. And not just the lives of our kids, but the lives of their family and the lives of our staff, the lives of our teachers and the adults who oftentimes we prioritize what's good for the kids and we let the adults figure it out. Or, let the chips fall where they may. And I think that in this case, so many of these ideas will succeed when the implementation is fully embraced across our families, our staff, and our students. And so ensuring that we are taking the direct impacts to all of those groups into account as we develop action plans will go a long way towards ensuring that we are able to make some of these changes in a successful, smooth way, rather than perhaps slightly uneven implementation across the district, or one group embraces it because they felt like it and one group didn't because it just hit the wrong way. But something that takes those real life impacts into account as these action plans are developed, and very excited to see what those plans look like and to hear the reports on those as they get developed and implemented over the next 5 years. So huge kudos to the team for putting together this amazing visionary document in all these different ways, and now I'm excited to see how we can minimize the devil that's in the details.
Can I respond to that?
Certainly.
I appreciate that reminder, Ms. Mahler. I think the work that we do every day actually faces that challenge. Because I don't know any change we've made that's been fully embraced by all students, staff, and families. I can't guarantee that we'll deliver on that. I've said numerous times in public at presentations that everybody wants progress, but nobody wants change. And those two words are used synonymously, but actually one requires the other, in many cases, not all. So I do believe that we need to consider the consequences, but also the advantages alongside. And part of leadership, whether you're an administrator at this table or a Board of Ed member, requires making the hard decisions, particularly those that will not be fully embraced by all. So I just want to go on record that I can't guarantee that all of our changes are going to not ruffle feathers or not be met with some resistance. So I just want to make sure that that's not what you're saying.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
There's no way that everybody's going to look
All right.
at everything as we do.
This won't make everybody happy.
100%.
Okay.
But I think the thing that makes it palatable and makes it possible is when people trust what's being done and how it's being done, and
Yep.
that the considerations have been made. That it's not just, some people aren't gonna like change, so I don't care what they think, which I'm not saying is what we do. But I think we need to make great care in some of these bigger changes and adjustments, that people understand that they're coming from a place of progress that does require some change, but that it's being done with a consideration towards how to account for as much of that challenge as possible. So it's simply a mindset and an approach, and one that I encourage us to continue pinpointing.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Ms. Glenn,
Yes.
if I may just follow up to that question, it was like we assumed, the city does take it, and no, they do not charge us.
Oh,
Thank you.
very good.
Good to know.
I just have a couple comments. Dr. Kutai, I appreciated, at the very beginning of the presentation, you're pointing to some past practices that have kind of laid the groundwork for this. And, you mentioned the instructional rounds, which I'd forgotten about, which at the time was, with Dr. Fieser, was really very groundbreaking. It was like,
Yes, right.
letting other teachers come into their classrooms
Right.
was a big thing. It was a big deal back then. And I think it goes to show how Milford Public Schools has over many years attempted to be groundbreaking and to push the envelope a little bit. Because as, I've heard you say several times that sometimes when you're not seeing progress, you have to make change. Something has to happen. What we're doing, the old way isn't working, then we have to look for something different that will work. So we've, in many times in my time on the board, and even prior, as I would just be a passive listener over there to Board of Ed meetings, for instance, going back to a study that we did many years ago on pupil personnel and special needs kids, and that kind of division between that department and the regular ed department. And I'm really encouraged to hear, Ms. Stewart, your passion about making sure that there's that collaboration and that we try to meld the two as much as possible. Because I think that work kind of stalled a little bit. It was very definitively identified that this was a problem and this was something that we should be correcting, and then the work kind of stalled. So I think that's a big point, and I'm really grateful to hear that you have so much focus on that in your work. And then talking about some of the other, the newer technologies, which it's way out of my wheelhouse, but what was you and I talked about it, there was at the Meadowside STEM night, there was is it AR? There was the art teacher had the goggles.
Yeah,
and what was
AR.
that? AR. What does that stand for?
Augmented reality.
Okay, all right.
They ARs
AR is
sets.
AR is when you can see something, it enhances what you're seeing, and VR is you're in it. Like
Okay.
VR, you don't see the world around you. AR, you see the world around you.
So this was AR, I think. It was pretty interesting, so.
I think it was VR.
VR?
At Meadowside, we bought them VR, AR.
Yeah, we bought them. They kind of do both now.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
There used to
Have
be a
8-year-old
fine line,
here to
but there
explain
really
it.
The kids and even the parents, they were all into it. They really loved it. So I think I can't relate to this, but seeing how excited kids get over it, it's, when you see that excitement, you know that it's gonna empower their learning. So I just think it's exciting. So it's exciting place to be right now in education. Any other comments or questions?
Just gonna, if I could close out with a comment?
Yes, certainly.
If no other board questions? You and I were recently having a conversation, and you said something that to me just, it's obvious in our field as educators, but change takes a long time in the field of education. It doesn't move quick, and I wanna say that Steve laid out a 5-year plan after being here 6 months, but he really has a 10-year plan, because it's not I'm sorry if I'm breaking your heart right now. He just looks very disappointed now. Change just doesn't move very quickly, because we're working with humans. It requires human behavior change. And you take that into your personal life or even your professional life, that's hard. And particularly in the field of education, because we've all been in education somewhere along our lives, particularly students, right, as students. So we have big hopes and dreams. We want to move as fast as AI, but that's not going to happen. So I just want to remind the board, and thank you for that reminder, that change takes time in classrooms.
Well, we can look at just, the reading. I mean, reading has been a big focus in the last year, and, you made the comment, everyone wants progress, but nobody wants change. Going back to prior to your tenure here in Milford Public Schools, we've had, our reading scores have been kind of stuck and stagnant, and what we were doing isn't working, so we needed to make some change, and the change came with a lot of some disruption, but people not really liking the change. So I think it does take a long time, and sometimes what stymies it is that the mindset that the change isn't good, or that we don't want to see change. So I think that takes some patience.
Yep.
But you're right, it takes a long time, so.
Adoption.
Thank you.
Yes,
It's all about adoption.
yep.
Change is easier than adoption.
Okay, so we'll move on to,
We're ready for the educator professional growth and learning plan that will require the board's approval this evening. I'll hand things over to Mr. Altieri.
So good evening, everyone. Tonight is really a story for a process that has occurred throughout the school year, and really our journey to building a new educator growth and professional learning plan. And I want to take you through kind of an executive summary of that tonight, specifically telling you a little bit of a story on the process that was used to design and grow the plan, but then also some of the process elements. So I want to take you through the supporting document that was provided in your meeting packet for this board meeting, but showcase some of the details with you this evening. So the current plan, if we think about the current state model, evolved around 2013. And that was, at the time, considered to be groundbreaking. It was the opportunity where we were going to start to take a look at multiple facets, multiple factors that went into how educators were evaluated, scored, and assessed. It was going to provide multiple touch points for educators, both within the classroom and outside the classroom. But one of the things that we started to see over the years were a variety of newspaper headlines. And one of the messages that became quick and apparent across not just Connecticut, but the entire educational community was the disconnection between feedback, support, and evaluation. And educators continuously spoke up about what the feedback they were getting, how it did not support their growth as educators in the classroom. And this has really prompted, and I think through the pandemic, the state of Connecticut really took some time to pause and reflect on the current educator growth model and provide the opportunity for districts to begin to think about how they were approaching educator growth and support within schools. So that really started and prompted our journey this year in creating the draft that we've shared with you tonight, so this draft framework. And the draft framework that we have shared with you, and you have the list of all of the individuals in your packet, but there were over 42 teachers, staff, instructional coaches, leaders that were involved in a series of 8 meetings throughout the 23-24 school year to develop the vision and the context for this model. And really the journey started with us identifying a core set of beliefs and guidelines that really drove the development of our process. So one of the pieces that we had back, if you rewound 10 years or so ago to 2013, was the state built the framework, and districts did some minor adjusting and tweaking. This was really building from the ground up. We tore down, went back down to the foundation, and built a plan that worked for us as educators. And it was exciting work, and it was hard work, but it was really worth it, and I think everybody that was involved in the process was really vested in it. And we had 4 different subcommittees that started the work, all facilitated by either a teacher leader or an admin leader within the group. And a special thank you to Ms. Stewart, as well as Mr. Tupka, who is a social studies teacher at Florin High School, for helping to co-facilitate the process. And what we wanted to do, as I mentioned to you, is we wanted to start with design principles. And we identified 6 that really came out of the state's initial guidance document that was shared with us back last summer, last July. And as we went into this, we wanted a few things as part of the work. We wanted to make sure that we had ongoing cycles of feedback. And when we talk about feedback, we're talking about feedback that comes from multiple varied sources. Not just necessarily a principal or an assistant principal giving feedback to a teacher, but we have a lot of support systems within district. Our staff are incredibly lucky with the amount of professional support that's provided to them. So how do we channel, how do we access some of those other support tools to make sure that teachers have that ongoing support in between the initial fall conference, the mid-year conference, and our end-of-year conference? We also wanted to make sure that we were looking at multiple measures of student performance. As Dr. Kataya mentioned earlier, she got into our district strategy presentation, that we're looking at not just student testing data, but there's also other means of data that we collect within the classroom and across the district. And we want to make sure that as educators are building their goals, they're coming back and considering all of those multiple data points. And we also really wanted teacher ownership in the process. Lots of components for self-reflection and self-assessment to guide the improvement work. So we started with something that should look very familiar to you all, and that's the model for high-quality instruction. And if you really zoomed in on the model for high-quality instruction, at the very top, if we pull that section out about the engineers, you'll notice that there's 4 key terms in there: collaborate, innovate, experiment, and reflect. And we thought, what a wonderful opportunity for teachers to embrace, or educators to embrace, these same core tenets throughout the professional growth process. So we started to construct the core elements of our document, utilizing these 4 basically as the guideposts to creating the architecture of our plan. So really thinking about the collaboration at the start of the year and the early parts of the year, getting teachers from same teams, across departments, to come together and build common goals, to look at student data and student learning from very early points in the year. Going into the innovate portion, strategies, thinking about a professional learning plan as part of the goal process, and using that as a place to bring those strategies back into the classroom from professional learning and try those things out with students, with an opportunity that we're not always looking for the right answer. We want our observers to go in and be able to say, it's okay it didn't work. What did you learn from it? And how are you going to revise your approach with students to make sure that they continue to reach their goals? And then the reflection. Even though the reflection here looks like it's an endpoint, it really is embedded throughout the process. But as we'll talk about in a little bit, that end of year conference, the dialogue is really about looking back to look forward. We want people to think about and embrace the work that they've done throughout the year and use that as a piece to guide planning at the end of one year to what they're going to do and where they're going to go next. So we don't want it to seem like it's a snapshot done, move to the next year, do something totally different. So this also required us to think about, as a PDEC team, what's important to us. And we refined our district vision for PDEC and the way that our work connects to support a variety of systems across the district. And if you look at the next slide, we've kind of pulled out some of the key words. And a lot of these key words appear throughout the framework. Everything from our culture of professional learning, to improving practice, to ongoing and collaborative reflection. We wanted all of these pieces to really become the core elements of our document. So as we rebalanced our plan and we thought about our core tenets, these were some of the key pieces that were important to us. First of all, it was the focus on the high quality instruction, making sure that we are engaging in professional learning that's helping to support and connect the work around teacher goals and practice. Simplifying and reducing the burden, opportunities for us to take away some of the paperwork, but make the paperwork that educators submit meaningful and part of their growth. Focusing on the things that matter. Since the last time that this plan became a piece for PDEC to develop and design, we now have 4 key pillars of our district. Everything from DRF to vision of the learner to HQI, and now with this year our equity framework. We want to make sure that as our educators craft their goals, they have that direct connection back to these 4 pillars. The feedback we cannot say enough about, and that is that educators have descriptive feedback that's timely and actionable. And it's not only coming through narratives, either written narratives or verbal discussions with their administrator, but it's also opportunities to get feedback from colleagues, from coaches. So we wanted to make sure that those were pieces across the board that were important to us. And lastly, really thinking about connections to professional development. One of the areas as educators create their goal plans is they're going to develop a professional learning pathway. And they're going to talk about how their professional learning throughout the year is going to be brought into the classroom to connect to what they're doing with learners. So I mentioned to you that there's core elements. So what I tried to do was take our plan, and we decided to organize our plan a little bit differently. In the past, typically each place would have a section. So there'd be a section for the mid-year, there would be a section for educator observation. We wanted the plan to serve almost as a guide map. So educators could start from one piece and it would literally take them throughout the year. So we broke it into 3 phases. And phase 1 was really around goal development to impact practice. And within that, opportunities that I mentioned earlier for collaborative goal setting. Starting at the beginning of the year with a review of student learning measures. Developing a professional learning path as part of that goal plan. And one of the pieces that is new is, as we mentioned, some of those self-documented feedback opportunities. So educators are going to tell us, as we create their plans with them, what are the different ways that they're going to get feedback outside of their traditional observations. And then the fall goal conference. And we're really thinking about making sure that the conferences now are truly dialogue, that there is the conversation, there is opportunities for the leader to make sure that there is connections with supports and professional learning. The second phase really gets into that experimentation. So we've called this the inquiry and reflection for student learning. And this is opportunities where now the educators established a goal plan. They're able to bring that plan back into the classroom, into the field, and test it with learners. And make those revisions based on the data that they're seeing. But also be able to say, I'm going to go on a lab site visit with other teachers and see a common goal practice. Opportunities for coaches to come into the classroom and work with teachers on strategy. So we want them, and the hope is at that mid-year conference, they're going to talk about all of the different ways that their self-documented feedback opportunities have helped to shape their practice throughout the school year. And then lastly, as we close out the year, we have that looking back to look forward, that reflection process. So we really want to make sure that educators look at not only their successes, but also what were some of the challenges that they've considered throughout the year, and how is that going to inform where they're looking to go as we move into the next school year. All three of these phases are all an effort of supporting and enhancing the outcomes for our learners. So I also want to talk about the process as a glance. So throughout the document, you'll see dates. We've identified dates as required through the state plan. There were certain non-negotiables that we had to have as part of our evaluation framework. And we've also identified cohort groups that list out who's involved in that group. And again, I won't necessarily read all of those elements to you. You have them within the plan as well as within the presentation. But we've done for educators as well as administrators. And it will list out not only the observations that occur from the administrator, but also, as I mentioned, those self-documented feedback opportunities. And we also have mini observations, which are a little bit different from the old term we used to say formal and informal. The mini observations are the short duration, enough to sample the daily classroom environment, but it also has the opportunity, and as we roll this out with our staff, we want to talk about the point that we're also tuning in on not only the teaching that's occurring in the classroom, but also the learning task, the environment, as well as the student affect. Getting in with students and talking about what they're doing, what they're learning. It's almost this approach of putting your 3D glasses on when you go in to observe instruction. And then the administrator evaluation process, very similar. The language is carried over from the last model in terms of site visits. I know, speaking for Dr. Katai and I, as we go in, we meet with building principals, assistant principals, almost on a weekly basis. Between Dr. Katai and I, we're in buildings for meetings quite frequently. This plan has the opportunity for administrators to not only engage in site visits with their leader, with their administrator, but also to do artifact reviews. So as we talked about tonight, the chances for educators to now, or our administrators to start building their school improvement plans from the district map, there's opportunities there where they may be creating documents, programs. So it will allow for artifact reviews, an opportunity to receive some feedback on programs that they're using to influence the forward direction of their school. So obviously, with all this said, there may be opportunities where educators need support. And we have, as part of the plan, put in 2 different tiers of assistance to support educators. The first one is the Tier 1, or structured assistance is what we've called it. And this is really short-term support, usually less than 45 days, to help address a weakness relative to job description or competency, that would have a plan developed and work in collaboration with the administrator. Should that not be enough support, we can elevate another level to the Tier 2 or the intensive support, and that can be anywhere from 45 to 180 days. Much more intensive, will often require additional opportunities for observation during that. And with both of these, there is a plan that gets developed, it's documented, that talks about the supports that would be put in place, professional learning, but also any of the observation structures that would be established to be able to support that educator over time. So we also made sure to within the plan, you'll notice within section 6 of the 23-page document, there is a place that addresses these supports for educators that are in need of it. So with that said, obviously a lot within the plan, a lot within the presentation, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to address any of your questions, obviously get any feedback from you, and I'll pause there.
Just to clarify, so
Sure.
we are adopting, we're voting on a draft that has to go to the state for approval, correct?
Correct. So the process is PDEC goes through a consensus protocol. They vote to approve the plan to send it to all of you in draft form. We bring the plan to you, presentation. Your vote tonight based on the motion would give us the next step to send that to the Connecticut State Department of Education for their review and approval, which we are hoping to hear sometime by late August.
Okay, and so the committee has given its consensus at this
The
point.
committee has given its consensus on June 6th. We did have a vote.
Very good. And so I don't think until looking over the packet, I don't think I realized that has this plan always included both teachers and administrators?
So the plan now makes it even more explicit. If you look at the state guidelines around the plan, it's educator and leader. We still call it administrator just because we have teacher leaders that are on the teacher contract, so we chose to stay with teacher and administrator, or educator and administrator.
So while your executive summary mentions the artifacts, there are actually observations for administrators as well.
Yeah, they're referred to as site visits.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Altieri on this? Ms. Irby?
Got a quick question on the year on the front. It says 2024 to 2025, and I was just wondering if you expected change in the document, like in the next year, or is this meant to go on forever?
That's a great question, Ms. Irby. So we're assuming a couple things. We're assuming that when we submit this to the Connecticut State Department of Education, that they don't return it to us with any additions or revisions, which would be done through PDEC, and then would have to come back in front of you just for, an addendum of what we've modified, just for you to give your approval on. Each year, annually, as part of our PDEC process, we would bring the plan back out, and that is the hope, and I've shared that with the team, is we've created the best process now on paper. It's implementing it, it's getting it in front of educators and seeing how it works for us. And there'd be an opportunity next year for us to make any revisions, not as large scale as going from, a blank cursor on the screen to a plan, but I envision each year that we would continuously make revisions to keep the model one that works best for us.
Okay, thanks. And the plan, does it exist in software? Was it tracked in software? Or what is the software?
In terms of how we house our forms and things,
How you keep track of the teacher's goals and
yeah, so we use an electronic system called Perform, and it's through Power School. It's a Power School program. And all of the teacher goal-setting forms, their observation forms, all of their conference forms are all stored there. And we're able to keep a composite of that over time, so we can go back and see prior year forms. All of the piece that's different now about this process is the ratings. We used to give a summative rating at the end of the year, beginning, developing, proficient, or exemplary. Those are no longer part of the state framework. So all of that was tracked through the Perform system.
Thank you. I like the plan. I really like the part on page 12 where there's 3 cohorts.
Yes.
And so that the tenured teachers do not have all of the individual steps, and that they're able to do more of a personal reflection than all of the.
And that was a slight revision we've made from the past, in that we had teachers would move between cohorts throughout the process. And we thought, for the sake of making sure that we can keep track, if you come in and you're new to the profession, and you've never had tenure before in a Connecticut school district, you would stay on cohort 1 for your 4 years, or the 40 months that you're employed with the Milford Public Schools. Cohort 2 are the educators that have received that tenure, and then cohort 3 is our tenured teachers. So they would stay, if you're brand new to the profession, you'd be there for the first 4 years, and then you would move over to that third cohort where you would stay indefinitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Ms. Doyle?
Ms. Irby's question on, or what you answered just helped me, just clarifying that. Cohort 1, new teachers were there for 40 months, 4 years, and then they move right into 3.
They would move to cohort 3. They would go in with that tenured staff group.
Okay, and so new to district, non-tenured, or non-tenured who are new to district, how long would they typically stay in that cohort?
So it's 20 months or 2 years.
Okay. And then I just have one more question.
If I could just clarify, so that would have been someone in cohort 2 who was tenured in another district?
Right, so let's say an educator was in another district for 10 years and then they've come over to take a position in Milford. They've received tenure in that school district. They would gain tenure with Milford
Us.
after 2 years.
All right, thank you. Ms. Doyle, sorry.
No, it's okay. And then on page 14, slide 13, in the structured assistance, would this be a case in tier 1, structured assistance? Is this where instructional coaches would be helping to provide this? Or who's providing that kind of educational, the support to the teachers in that intensive period? Who has kind of responsibility for that?
Could be a couple different things, and that's where the plan gains the flexibility, it's really in that discussion with the administrator. It may be observing a colleague during that time. It may be support from a coach. It may be a professional learning resource that the educator is using to pull information from to integrate into practice. So I think it really depends on what the concern is and creating a professional learning plan that supports the educator with attaining that goal.
I like that so many teachers who are in the process are involved in it, because I think that's one of those places where going to other teachers who might be providing some feedback that's helping you to coach might be taken not in the right way sometimes.
Yep.
And so having other teachers saying, hey, I'm open to this, would you be open to this? I can learn from you, we can make each other better. And that's what the overall goal is to go from there. That's it.
Ms. Preet?
You just mentioned those under the teacher contract, and you mentioned the teacher leaders. So where there's 8 teacher leaders, 32 instructional coaches, they follow this same goal, even though they don't have the same tasks. So the teacher leader oversees the elementary, the instructional coaches oversees, comes into the classroom, and works with the teachers and the students. And then there are 5 teacher leaders in central office, but they're all gonna sort of follow this same, if they're under a teacher
Correct.
contract.
They're still creating goals, they're
It's the
still
same-
looking at student data, that is all still true.
Okay.
It does not matter the
So
role, it's
yeah.
it's
So when we say
customized.
just teacher and just administrator, it encompasses more roles.
Yeah, we try to use educator, so it takes in, because
Okay.
there's also staff in there, school psychologists, social workers.
Okay,
So there are multiple folks within the educator category.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Ms. Petrosky?
Mine is just a very quick comment. I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the focus on the support, and meaningful is everywhere. So not just paperwork, meaningful feedback, meaningful data, all of that. So I really did appreciate that, and I really appreciate the fact that there was so much input from a variety of staff, from many different roles. So I thought that was really important. So excellent, thank you.
Yeah, we had every school, every level represented.
Great.
Is Ms. Fowler okay?
Do you have questions, Ms. Mahler?
Oh,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I am both okay and I have a question. I love seeing this plan, yet again, the same, really thoughtful, really comprehensive, really well put together with so many different voices and inputs and perspectives, particularly coming on the heels of just having heard about in the 5-year plan, retention, career development, that focus on helping our educators become the best professional versions of themselves that they can be. And there are so many different opportunities that are outlined in here for everything from the learning and the observation and what works, what doesn't, the feedback systems, all of that is just so well put together. And I'm still in this mindset of, okay, and then that translates into what? from an action perspective? What does that look like on the ground when it's implemented? And I know we have a lot, I'm gonna draw some connections where they probably don't need to be drawn tonight, but the number of professional developments and days and opportunities that we have for teachers to get together and work in these groups and meet in these different cohorts and discuss and learn and grow. I would encourage, where possible, that we then, from the experience of families, there is that element of professional development that we see because we have the half days and we have the in-service days and all of that. There are also many, many times where teachers are out of classrooms because they are doing some type of learning during the school day, whether it's an observation or it's a meeting downtown or it's something else. And I know that a lot of the objectives and the goals that are aimed and outlined and really articulated in this plan, the culture of professional learning, all of that is so important, reducing the burden on teachers, the paperwork, that's all great. I would encourage there to also be an effort in the implementation stage when we get to that of keeping teachers in classrooms as much as possible. We make this big effort to keep kids in classrooms as much as possible across all these different things we've talked about. But if we could find a way to encourage all of these professional learning opportunities while at the same time also prioritizing teachers being in classrooms with kids rather than spending lots of time during the school days out and about and learning at that point. Not possible to never do it, obviously, but perhaps to strike that balance in a way that veers a little more towards being in classrooms when the kids are there. I think that might go a long way towards balancing out the implementation of this in a more successful way. So love this plan, love what it's going to do for our educators. Would like to see it balanced out well in a way that it also works for our kids too.
Thank you.
Other questions? I'm sorry, Ms. Wolf, wait.
That's okay, I just have a quick question. First of all, I just want to, everything Ms. Petrosky said, I echo as well. I love the thoughtfulness, I love the depth, I love the collaboration that went into this. I think it's something that the Milford Public School System really could take huge pride in, our commitment to professional development as a way of not just ensuring that our teachers are the best that they can be, but that our students are as well. I'm just having a moment of disclarity. I know that I've seen elements of a lot of what's in here before, but I don't ever remember seeing the kind of really comprehensive plan that was sent to us in the packet. Is this plan as a whole something new?
No, so we've had a professional growth plan, evaluation plan for many, many years. Obviously, the flexibilities came in with COVID, which allowed for some differences in terms of educator goals and making sure social emotional learning was in the forefront, but we've had a plan right up through this year that we're currently utilizing now. This is with the opportunity and some of the guidelines that the state's put forth for districts to be able to really dream and reimagine. And I think we'll see a lot of similarities. I had the opportunity to really look at some of my colleagues' work as they've done this with their districts. And there are some similarities, but I also think there's a lot of opportunities where districts are creating things that work for the educators that are in front of them. So we do have a plan that's in place now, and it does outline, obviously, the structures around evaluation, around rating, around scoring. This one you will see is much more user-friendly.
But this booklet, so to
Yes.
speak, that was put together, this
Yep.
is an original document
This is
to meet.
This is an original document created
That's
this year.
putting all of our great stuff together in one place and.
Correct.
So the board hasn't seen it previously, or you haven't,
Yes.
because it was predated, 2013 was the last time that the board had to
Okay.
adopt a formal plan, correct? 2013 was the last time that, I don't think
So.
it's been updated since then that I can.
Correct, so unless there's massive revisions or there's a complete change in plan, that's the only time that it would need to come back in front of you for a vote for revision. Obviously, we did, as a district, we adopted the flexibilities. during COVID, so there was probably some update throughout COVID that was brought forth towards the beginning. The flexibilities were around for several years, and they're kind of ending that flexibility piece this year. And this is, as we transitioned out of the flexibilities, this was the plan across the state.
And so this is being done because the state has said it's time for you to revise your plan, right? Which is done periodically. They might pass new regulations or,
Legislature passed
Yeah,
new requirements.
yeah, this
Right.
is legislatively passed.
correct, right,
and
so as it was in 2013, it
Correct, was the last time we went through a major
Correct, right, so
programmatic
that's why
shift.
we haven't really seen
Gotcha.
it.
Gotcha. I mean, I think it's a fabulous document, right? I think it's, the idea of, putting everything down in black and white. I think it's great for us. I think it's great for you, for the administrators, for teachers. I mean, what a great tool, right? And that idea of being able to dream on paper. That's a pretty powerful thing.
Other questions? Okay, we have to,
Yeah, so there is a
Adopt.
motion that is included for you within the cover memorandum that was in the meeting.
I make a motion that the Board of Education approves the 2024-25 Milford Public Schools Professional Growth and Learning Plan and authorizes the plan to be submitted to the Connecticut State Department of Education for consideration and approval.
is there a second?
Second that.
Mr. Vermender has seconded. We need a roll call vote because Ms. Mahler is remote, so.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmender,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Kova,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Preet,
Yes.
Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you.
Thank you
Board.
all. Appreciate
Thank you for
it.
the presentation.
All right, let's move on to some policies. I'll bring to your attention 4117.6, exit interviews, changes made for the inclusion of employee and strike of volunteering. Any questions on that?
I think not. Motion?
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 4117.6, Employee Exit Interviews Surveys as presented by the administration.
Second that.
Second by Mr. Fermender. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmender,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Kova,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Preet,
Yes.
Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you.
Next policy that is in front of you this evening for a second read is 5121.3, academic dishonesty. Changes to this policy reflected in blue include, starting with the Milford Board of Education supports, change in wording from will to does, and then some shifts in the definition section, specifically adding the word is after cheating and plagiarism, and then just defining that both cheating and plagiarism are prohibited. And then the reference to the artificial intelligence policy.
Motion is,
Motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 5121.3, Academic Dishonesty as presented by the administration.
Second that.
second. Is there any discussion on this? Everybody's good with it? Okay, roll call vote.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmender,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Kova,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Preet,
Yes.
Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you.
Third policy for your review tonight is 5145.53, transgender and gender nonconforming youth. In the first paragraph, the change to the board directs the Milford Public Schools or district to adopt. In the third paragraph, adding in the policy for Title IX and its accompanying regulation, as well as in the next paragraph down, also referring to Title IX And in the final paragraph as well, making the reference to the policy for non-discrimination, Title IX.
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 5145.53, transgender and gender nonconforming youth, as presented by the administration.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Do we have discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmender,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Koba,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Preet,
Yes.
Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And board members, the final policy for your consideration this evening is 6141.3273, artificial intelligence. Adding in the first paragraph after foster high levels of critical thinking. And then skipping down to the second to last paragraph, adding in the board encourages the district to develop strategies to support educators in integrating AI technologies to augment student learning experiences. And then also adding in the legal reference in blue for Public Act 2215.
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 6141.3273, artificial intelligence, as presented by the administration.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmender,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Koba,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Preet,
Yes.
Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Move on to item D, under superintendent's report.
Yes, Ms. Glennon, we're going to turn things over to Mr. Brennan for that.
Ms. Glenn, members of the board, thank you very much. Tonight I was going to talk about the transfers and from and to balance out the budget transfer for the proposed 23-24 budget. So as the board is aware, and as we discussed previously, specifically at quarterly budget reports, there were significant deficits projected in certain accounts. Specifically, some of our special ed accounts had some significant deficits that we needed to address. So throughout the year, administration will take certain prudent cost-saving measures to address these items and curtail spending where possible so that we can make sure that we are ending at a balanced budget. This tonight would represent our first transfers, our first set of transfers, and it really culminates the bulk of those transfers. So there will be another meeting in July where we will finalize with some smaller transfers, but this really represents the bulk of those transfers for tonight. I will go through each one of these transfers of where we're transferring from, and then where we anticipate transferring those amounts to. So in this first one here, certified teacher salaries, account 1111, we are looking to transfer $325,000. In the severance account, retirements, account 1130, we are looking to transfer $227,000. And I can go through the reasons, as listed on this form here of why we're transferring those. So the severance account, this was savings attributed to less teachers and teacher retirements than we had normally budgeted for. The salary budget freeze one, I'm going to move that one to the last to talk about the budget freezes altogether. The next one here is the workers' comp insurance, account 2003. So these savings are based on better than expected experience with the carrier. And that amount that we will be transferring is $55,000. The Blue Cross Blue Shield over 65 account, account 2006. This is $70,000 that will be transferred, and it is based on less requests for supplement reimbursements than was anticipated. Our sub-teaching account, account 3212, these savings were attributed to the shortage of interns that we had, and we will be transferring $119,700 from that account. And then these final three here, the salary budget freeze, account 1200, for the amount of $172,893. The supply freeze account, account 6000, for the amount of $160,000. And then the other educational support freeze account, account 8000, $93,754. We will be transferring those as well to address some of our special ed costs that we have accrued this year. Can you flip to the next page? I'm sorry, and those all total $1,223,347. As you will notice, the transfer to is exactly the same amount of money so those two amounts are balanced. And then these ones here are transferring to a number of different special ed transportation and special ed tuition. As you guys have, as we've talked about throughout the year, that's one of those accounts that, has some variability into it based on student needs. And the way that we're gonna address that is from these specific transfers. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have with those transfers.
Any questions for Mr. Brennan? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. On the workers' comp insurance line, what does based on better than expected experience mean? Does that mean less workers' comp?
Correct. So experience in the workers' comp world is basically how many claims that we are submitting. So when we have a significant good year, then what the company will do is pass those savings on to us. And we put a number of preventative measures and trainings in place so that we're very proud of our workers' comp program to make sure that we're able to do that, and we're fortunate to have some extra savings in there.
So we provide a safe working environment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Ms. Preet?
Is this something so it happens every year? Do you get lessons learned year over year, or is this just something that happens and there's no control and there's no way to anticipate any of this, or do you gain lessons learned year over year?
That's a great question. And yes, I think there's always lessons learned. And as we go through the budget process and we're looking to plan for a future budget, we always take into consideration a historical view of that. And that's why I think it's really helpful that we list out numbers of years there in the budget book, because we're always looking at that historical approach. There is a variability to it as well, so I think budgeting is both an art and a science, because there's certain things that we just can't predict. For example, in our certified teacher salaries here, the severance retirements, 1130, that could change significantly on year to year, so it's kind of hard to budget for something like that, because you may get a significantly number more teachers retiring one year and then less the following year. So there is a historical view to that, but there's certain things that have a variability to it that we just can't control.
Thank you. What are we typically budgeting for the average number of retirements now? Is 15?
18 is what we budget for.
Still 18?
Yes, at approximately 46,000 per one.
I thought we had changed it at some point.
I think so.
Last year we budgeted.
But my caution would be, so this year we only have 7, so next year we might get hit harder.
Right,
Correct.
correct, yeah.
Based on
So sometimes it's
experience.
more,
And
we've
just
had
to-
more and we've had less.
Yes,
so.
to provide a little historical view for you, last year we had 11, the year before we had 20.
Right.
So there is that range there from any given year.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, you have a motion?
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the administration's recommended 2023-2024 budget transfers in the amount of $1,223,347 as presented.
Second. Any discussion? Ms. Mahler, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you if you had any questions. So, no? All right, any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote?
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmander,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Koba,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Creed,
Yes.
Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
Susan Glennon.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you.
And we'll continue on with the disbursement report.
Thank you. Ms. Glennon, members of the board. In your package, you'll find a list of all this district's disbursements for the month of May 2024. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. First line, Treasurer of City of Milford, use of building, what building? March
When we are like a pass-through for that, so we don't own the buildings, the city does. So when the buildings are used, what happens is the people would pay us, or the company, whatever it may be, and then what we would do is we would transfer that money to the city, less the amount of the cost for custodians.
Okay. So someone rented the building
Correct.
for the
It happens
weekend.
very regularly. You know, some weekends after schools, somebody rents the building, they would pay us directly, they go through the whole facility use process, and then what we would do is we reimburse the city less the amount that we would be charged for custodial use.
Okay, and then second, Pullman and Conley for legal services from March 2024, is that for residency hearings again? Halfway down the page, 3/4 of the way down, between the two Birch and Moses,
On the first page?
on the first
Oh.
page.
237910.
From March, that would have been residency.
It might have been.
No? No,
I have to look, I can see.
no, it's too late for residency.
Yeah.
There's
Because
other
they-
work that
Right, 'cause they-
Mr. Sedor does for us.
Because they usually, because Bircham is our primary.
Well,
Right.
Bircham is dependent on the issue. The administration sometimes might need a different legal
Right.
counsel from Bircham, so.
But we aren't on retainer with Pullman.
No, but on speed dial, some cases.
Understandable, thank you.
First speed dial is to Birch and Moses, that's our default, but sometimes there's just a need to reach out to a second counsel.
Got it, thank you. That was it.
Other questions? Ms. Petrowski?
I see that there are quite a few charges here for the chiller
Yes.
at Foreign. And I know we've talked about replacing that chiller, and these are somewhat substantial. Just
Correct.
try to keep it working,
Yes.
because we didn't have the monies to replace it, right? I mean, this is $280,000 versus an $800,000 replacement.
That is correct, yeah, and there was one of them, for instance, if you look at the 48,451, which is, I don't know what line item that is for you guys in your package, but that chiller condenser, it says eddy repairs, so that eddy repairs is like a test to see how the system is working and whether or not it's actually leaking fluid, and then there's repairs to that as well. So there's a system that's comprehensive and supplies such a large square footage, it needs constant preventative maintenance, and to your point, yes, when there's an element of it that goes down or that needs to be repaired, it's something that's gonna be costly and that we need to address right away.
Yeah, I mean, I see just the parts and repairs was on 5202 on page 40. It was $215,000 at one point in time. So it just something to consider. One of those deferrals is going to kind of come back to us. Will this get us further so we can defer longer, or are we just sort of duct taping this?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, duct tape.
Yes to
Okay,
all.
I guess that was my
Very
point. I'm
expensive
trying to
duct tape.
understand
Expensive duct tape.
how
I do love
expensive is our
duct
duct
tape,
tape.
Other questions on the report? Ms. Mahler, do you have any questions? Okay, we can move on to TMD, Talent Management Report.
Great, thank you. Included in my monthly report are the listing of job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. I do want to point out a few things this month. As mentioned, we're up to only 7 retirements. We don't know what's going to happen after the last day of school. There could be a couple over the summer, which would be pretty typical. On the listing of job postings, I wanted to mention the ASL posting because it could be confusing. We have it listed 3 times in 3 different ways, being that it's a new area to us and it's definitely a shortage area. We wanted to reach out to any possibility, any combination of possibility to try to get the program up and running. And I'm happy to say we did have an interview this past week for a candidate for that position. I also wanted to mention that this is the time of year where the listing of job openings does change daily. I, in fact, am conducting 3 final interviews tomorrow with candidates, so that's the good news. It'll turn over. Also, on stipend appointments, I wanted to mention that many of the stipends that you'll see on the report are by contract. They're in the teacher contract. So the school counselor stipend, the dean, the athletic director, the teacher leaders, those are all by contract listed in the NEA contract. Lastly, you have the 3 Team leader and curriculum leader appointments for the middle schools, again, stipends by contract, and the department chair and team leader stipends for the high schools. And also, there's a giant listing of para stipends that we give you this time every year, and those are by contract. Those are $400 to $800 each. They're identified in the beginning of the year, so if somebody is in a position that gets a stipend, they're told ahead of time. And these would be for things like, if someone's, a para's in a position of the job developer, if they're a job coach, if they're assigned to a medically fragile student, and also if they are a certified registered behavior tech. So those are the different areas where somebody can get a stipend as a para. And that's all I wanted to point out.
Could I ask, just to clarify, if some other teachers that were going to retire, they would have to inform you before July 1st in order to retire in the school year? Or?
No, they can actually inform us all the way till August 1st.
Okay.
What happens if somebody waits to put in their retirement, it depends on whether they tell the TRB or not. So in order to get a retirement check from the TRB, they would have to do it before July. But some people are still trying to decide, so maybe they just miss a payment and they tell us the end of July.
Okay.
We definitely require a 30-day notice, so usually by August 1st, we'll have a kind of a final number of retirements.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Capasna?
Ms. Mahler?
Ms. Mahler?
This is probably a silly question, and I may just be reading the paras list incorrectly, but I'm only seeing 7 of the 8 elementary schools.
For the stipends?
It's not.
Yeah, so some schools only have 1 or 2 paras, and if they are not in a program that requires a stipend, whereas some of our elementary schools have, 15 paras. So that's probably likely the explanation there.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Other questions?
That completes the superintendent's
All right, thank you, Dr. Kutaya. Consent agenda, Ms. Petrosky.
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves consent agenda items, consideration of minutes, May 20th, 2024 business meeting, and the May 28th, 2024 committee of the whole meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Fermender is seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmender,
Present, yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Kova,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Pre,
Yes.
Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
Susan Glennon.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item 7, we have an executive session this evening, Ms. Petrosky.
Make a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussion of salary for the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning and Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations, inviting Dr. Anna Pataya to join.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Yep. Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Scott Furmender,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Tom Kova,
Yes.
Lauren Maller,
Yes.
Una Petrowski,
Yes.
Christina Pre, Michael Smith,
Yes.
Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
Susan Glennon.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, we are in executive session at 9:15.
Yeah, she did.
Math.
Are we all here?
Yes.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, we will reconvene into public session at 9:56.
Is there someone back there at MGAT?
I don't know.
That's an awesome voice.
Thank you.
Drinking card. We reconvened into public session at 9:56. Ms. Petrosky.
I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the salaries for the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning and the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations as discussed in executive session.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Okay, Mr. Fermender has seconded. For the record, Ms. Mahler has left the meeting, so she will not be voting. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Board comment?
Sorry, I was typing. I just want to say thank you for a successful year. Been a great year. Look forward to doing the work over the summer and then coming back in the fall and starting again and implementing the new budget and all those fun things.
Thank you.
Here and all those fun things.
Ditto.
Yes, all those fun things. Anyone else? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second that.
Any opposed to adjourning at 9:58? Okay, we are adjourned. We'll see you all in
Before 10 o'clock.
executive session in 3.